human. We're better than this!
Hate is at the core of Belos' character. His goal throughout the entire show is to exterminate witches and demons on the Boiling Isles because of his hatred for them. But hate is not developed in a vacuum. Belos, an Englishman from the human realm, would most likely have followed the Anglican Church, which preached intolerance and hatred for sexual and religious minorities during the time he grew up. In our universe, the first white men to arrive in Connecticut were the Dutch in 1614 AD. In the Owl House, however, it seems the English got there a year before them in 1613 AD. This is the year Caleb and Phillip discover a portal to the demon realm. Gravesfield, Connecticut was founded in 1635, and since Caleb and Phillip have statues in the town, it can be inferred that the two traveled between the realms for at least some time between 1613 and 1635. The known story is that Phillip wanted to become witch hunter general because that's what Caleb wanted to be, and Phillip was much younger than Caleb when they first entered the demon realm, based on his initial form and hollow mind. Eventually, after a period of separation, Phillip would discover that Caleb had fallen in love with a witch called Evelyn, and their child would become Ida's great-great-grandparent. Evelyn and Caleb would also craft Flapjack, who would become Caleb's palisman. After discovering this, Phillip would kill Caleb, and Evelyn would escape with the portal Phillip used and hide it on the Clothrone estate, where Ida would find it roughly 375 years later. Phillip, using Caleb's DNA, would create Grimwalkers of Caleb that would serve him. Grimwalkers seem to be sort of like sentient beings in Miraculous, but there's not a lot of information on what exactly they are. Phillip adopts the name, or pseudonym?
It's Phillip.
Whatever. He goes by Belos and creates a religion around types of magic in the Titan.
He says he can talk to the Titan.
The Titan's dead. How is that possible?
The Belos era historical consensus claims that the Savage Ages were a, quote, time of chaos, and that Belos went on a, quote, crusade to unify the Isles. Quote, the Savage Ages caused such devastation that many people have proved willing to follow him. The devastation that historians claim to have occurred is known by the audience to be caused by Belos and his Golden Guard, despite it being blamed on wild magic. This is an overtly political message. Constantine I of the Roman Empire adopted Christianity as the official religion of the empire. He was the first emperor to do this, uprooting the Greco-Roman belief system that the empire previously held. Furthermore, Constantine would criminalize homosexuality, a natural practice in humans that had been occurring since the dawn of time, and was now a heinous crime. Belos too created a belief system that took something completely natural that everyone did, in this case wild magic, and criminalized and demonized it.
This doesn't look dangerous. This looks awesome. Why did Belos want to banish wild magic again?
Well, the Titan supposedly doesn't like it.
Danitaris here is making a direct allegory between Belos and Constantine I. The Owl House is an overtly political and queer show, and this message is at its core.
I hate seeing people look at Ida that way. But how can I prove he's actually evil? It feels so obvious, but no one believes me. No one answers my letters. Ugh, I don't know what to do.
No one wants to think they've wasted their life following the wrong person. We just gotta find something big to change their minds.
Fascism is a political system that relies on oppression. Belos' government perfectly reflects this. In the human realm, it's easy to view fascism as an ideology that benefits one group of people at the expense of the rest. This is an easy materialist explanation for the intolerance in form of racism, misogyny, homophobia, and transphobia. But it is not true. Intolerance and the resulting ideologies not only harm the people targeted, but they harm all groups. A common sentiment among the left is that straight white men don't want to be leftists because dismantling institutional oppression will not favor them, as that oppression benefits them. This is, however, false. Straight white men are in fact better off when freed from the shackles of white supremacy, toxic masculinity, and cisnormativity. The structures imposed on sexual, ethnic, and religious minorities not only constrict those minorities, but also restrict those who impose those structures, which in the West is straight white men. The oppression imposed by these structures actually harms those slated to benefit from it because of the uniformity and rigidity it forces on them. In the human realm, straight white men are expected to act and carry themselves in a certain way. The range in which they can express themselves is, though freer than that of the oppressed, still limited. A straight white man under these structures is unable to freely express his gender, unable to freely socialize with who he pleases, unable to be who he truly is without falling out of the specific category placed upon him by intolerant structures. The straight white man is better off in a society without intolerance, even when the structures are created to institutionally benefit him. This is the great lie at fascism's core. Under Belosian proto-fascism, the Emperor's Coven is this group that supposedly benefits off the oppression of wild magic. Because they are the only coven permitted by Belos' religion to practice all forms of magic, in their minds, they're doing better. This dynamic is perfectly represented in the Owl House, because not only is the naturalness of wild magic so clear, but so too is the fact that all witches, even those in the Emperor's Coven who can already practice all forms of magic, would still be better off without this oppression.
Blasphemy!
Blaspheme you!
This idea is exemplified in the character of Steve. Steve is a genius and overlooked character because he is at the top of this power structure, able to do all forms of magic, and is throughout the Isles hailed as an elite. But Steve too had his talisman taken from him and consumed by Belos, and his arc of leaving the Coven shows how even the benefactors of institutional oppression are better off without it. In time, they too become victims.
Steve is beginning to regret his choices.
Under Belos' fascist government, witches who practice wild magic and don't repress it are rounded up by the Emperor's Coven and put in prison. The Emperor's Coven gains recruits by finding the elite and most ideologically motivated from across the Isles. This is an exact copy of the SS, the Nazi Party elite soldiers who were loyal to Hitler and Himmler, and which were Nazis recruited from Germany and the nations it conquered that believed in the cause. The Emperor's Coven rounding up wild witches is the same as the SS rounding up Jews, homosexuals, transgenders, and other enemies of the Nazis to be killed in the concentration camps. The inhuman experiments conducted on the basilisks is also paralleled within the Nazis, who carried out abhorrent trials on concentration camp inmates during the regime. More of this messaging can be seen within the character of V. The symbolism in V's character cannot be ignored. Basilisks are able to extract magic, and Belos wanted to harness this power for use in his draining spell. While it's unclear whether he did, V as a character is first and foremost a refugee. Her entire arc revolves around escaping a fascist state that persecutes her race. And it's important to note that she does not return to her home dimension until the government she fled from is overthrown. This too is an overtly political message, and the trauma she deals with from that is something that probably would have been explored had the show not been cancelled. Another important thing to note is that the accusations of witchcraft in New England in the 1600s were deeply rooted in homophobia. Many of the women accused of witchcraft were women without husbands and lesbians. A very clear political message in a show where the main character is a gay witch. One of the most important details in Belos' journey is that King's dad, the Boiling Isles, was in fact trying to prevent Belos from accomplishing his goal.
Took years to find them, almost as if the world wanted to hide them from me.
I didn't realize you're already combining glyphs. You do have a strange intuition with these. It took me years to figure that out. Almost like the Titan himself didn't want me to have that knowledge. Though you're still decades away from beating me.
When Luce dies and meets King's dad, he says that he's been trying to stop Belos all this time and help Luce and her friends beat him. This can partially explain Luce's strange intuition with glyph magic. Luce's mindset of open-mindedness, love, and acceptance is shown to be inherently more powerful than hatred and intolerance. Hatred needs centuries of power to accomplish what mere decades of love can achieve. This message is directly political too. The LGBTQ movement in the West has been able to successfully undo nearly 18 centuries of homophobia and anti-queer rhetoric, to the point where nearly all Westerners, even Americans, have an overwhelmingly positive outlook on queer people. Another direct parallel with the human realm is that the Titan, god of the people of the Boiling Isles, is gender fluid. This important detail is in direct reference to God in the human realm, who has no gender. In canon for Axial Age religions, God is a being with no gender and no sex, but refers to himself with he/him pronouns and as the Father. This furthers the understanding of the non-rigidity of gender. In the myth Belos propagates that wild magic is harmful and unnatural is a direct parallel to the myth that queer people are unnatural. Queer people exist in every culture, and homosexuals and transgender people were accepted in every early Western society, and that did not change until Axial Age religions took hold.
The Owl House is a perfect example of the fragility and artificiality of hatred. Phillip killed his own brother for loyalty to his puritanical hatred. He had to change his identity in the pursuit of hatred. He created grimwalkers, put basilisks in chains, killed, lied, deceived, and corrupted himself in pursuit of hatred, his ideology. But God himself was against him, and after all his effort, he lost. Because hate really is less powerful than love. People are made to love. Loving is the most natural thing a person can do. Hatred is weak, brittle, delicate, and most of all, fragile. Hatred puts up a veneer of strength, an illusion of rugged invincibility, a facade of power. The real power, though, is in love. Fascism is weak because it relies on hate, and hate is weak. The love of life, humanity, and your fellow person is the strongest thing there is. Humans became the dominant species on this planet through cooperation, by loving each other, not by dividing and destroying each other. Love is not unnatural. Hate is unnatural.